Call to order the Public Works and Utility Committee meeting at Lisbon Village Hall, Wednesday, November 20th, 2024, 5:04 p.m. Roll call, please.
Trustee Moonen,
Present.
trustee Beal,
Here.
member Miller,
Here.
member Everly,
Here.
member Pless,
Here.
engineer Neitzel,
Here.
utility accountant Sargent,
Here.
administrator Nicholas, here, DPW director Wilakowski,
Here.
and clerk Fazerketch to record the minutes.
All right, we'll stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Citizens' comments will start in person. Please step to the podium. Hearing, seeing none, we'll move to virtual.
Anyone on Zoom would like to speak during citizen comment, please use the raise hand function. No hands raised on Zoom.
Last call. Moving on, item 4, approval of meeting minutes, October 16th, 2024, Public Works Utility Committee.
There was one last minute typo correction that was handed out. It's highlighted in yellow. Under new business on page 2 of 3, item B, the correct dollar amount should have been $4,530 rather than the $38,000 that was in the initial draft minutes.
Wow.
Details. Move for adoption as presented and corrected.
Motion made by Mr. Everly,
I'll second.
second by Jane. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I'm not opposing, but I wasn't at the meeting, so I'm not voting.
One abstained.
Yeah.
Motion carries 4-0. Departmental reports, Department of Public Works, Nick Wilakowski.
All right, so the highway department had a pretty busy month there. A lot of truck maintenance and getting trucks ready for winter, so putting on plows, wings, salter, sanders, whole 9 yards, going over all the trucks, doing nut and bolt checks. Basically getting them all ready for this winter. Guys did an awesome job with a lot of work. Also underbody treated all the trucks, so we did some fluid film and cosmolining the frames and everything, so prevent a lot of the rust from spreading or preventing rust starting, I guess. So on one of the pictures you can see the dump box on one of our plow trucks rotting out on the front end, so the guys actually got some sheet metal and they actually framed up the whole front of it, welded it in there and riveted it together, so that truck just needs to make it through the winter. So hopefully that's the one that's going to be getting replaced, but a lot of welding's been done on that truck. So
When's the new one coming?
spring,
End of next year?
spring,
Oh,
hopefully,
will be?
hopefully spring. It was supposed to be here.
And this is the one that's going.
It's the one that's going, but
Okay.
it's needed a lot of work because there was salt just falling out of the bed, so it need a lot of work. So the guys got all the trucks ready. So they were doing good on that, and some tree cutting done in Plainview Parkway, and then we'll have just tree cleanup throughout the village. And the parks did some mowing and mulching leaves, spraying weeds, working on the tree nursery. That's looking really good over there. It's gonna be exciting once that's finished. And then director, I did we ordered new flagging signs for work zones. So if you see on the one picture, that's a legal sign that's on the left, and the right's technically not legal. Due to the reflective, the size of the sign for 45-mile-an-hour roads. So we got a whole new set of signs for that. So that'll help us for road projects. And then shot numbers on Freeze Place, did a lot of work in the shop with the guys. And tree cutting too with insurance claims for the loader and our truck, windshield crack on the loader. And plow truck had a crack in the windshield too, so those went in to get replaced before winter here, so don't cause us any issues, and yeah, that's about it. I met with Mitch to look over some culverts, get his expertise on what some of his thoughts and how to approach them going forward in the near future for some repairs and possibly replacements. So he's gonna get some numbers put together a little more accurate for us for future.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
What is the underbody treatment for the truck? Is it
So-
done once a year or is it?
So we usually do them in fall. We used to do fluid filming, which is just an undercoating that basically lubricates the frame, prevents rust from, so it's supposed to prevent rust from spreading and getting worse. And it's worked decent. That's what Joe was doing for a while, and it's prolonged the life of the trucks significantly. We switched to Cosmoline, which is more of a waxy type of coating, and it looks like straight from factory. So we've been trying to do it for the new trucks, doing it twice a year. To keep up on it, it's kind of a costly, it's about 178 for 5 gallons, and that'll get you probably half of the trucks done. So, but you have to spray it on, you throw on the lift, you go over the whole frame of everything, and it prevents the rust from happening. So we had a good outcome with it so far. The new trucks with the frames are looking a lot better. And I also forgot to bring up our brine tank. That's probably have to get looked at next year. He put in, so it holds 5,000 gallons.
Is that the one that's in the picture?
Yeah. So that should be full. If you look in the picture, it should be all the way to the tippy top. It's not, because the bottom of the tank's starting to expand out. So that basically, he didn't want to put any more in it, because he's starting to get a little nervous, because if you guys seen videos of them exploding, they're not too fun. Have it happen, so it is, that's what happens when tanks sit outside. They see the sun a lot. I don't even know how old that tank is, to be honest with you. Pretty old. It should be replaced on a certain time frame that they can only be in service, so that'll be something we probably should look into in the next year or two to getting that probably relocated, maybe into the salt shed, and get a new tank, so we don't have it explode.
Do you have to have spill containment on those?
Possibly, not 100% sure, not 100% sure. I know a lot of places do put the concrete barriers around them, just so if they do decide to go. I know they have to be on a concrete pad of some sort of sturdy pad, so.
Maybe the new ones have some type of UV protection or something, because that plastic in the sun just
Yeah,
goes to,
yeah, and we were thinking possibly it would be something we put in the salt shed in the corner, so it's out of the elements, and then you can just fill up from inside quick. And make it a little.
Okay, that's
long
my
life of
question.
it.
Okay.
I know a lot of places put them inside.
But
their salt
you
sheds.
think it'll make it through the winter at least?
I
hope.
Yeah, I'm not, if I have to fill up, I'm not going all the way out.
Yeah.
It's gonna be half.
You
the-
get that stuff pre-mixed in, it comes in a
Yeah,
tank?
so what's in there, the turbo melt, so it's good for negative 56 degrees. So
Okay,
that's something we pre-treat our salt with. Once it gets down to lower teen, we start switching to that to pre-treat the salt. So it works better.
Okay.
Any questions for Nick? Right, moving on to utility district, Don Neitzel.
Good evening. My report should be in your packet. The flows at the lift stations for the month of October remained in line with what we had seen the prior month in September. Janine Lift Station, the average flow was about 18 gallons a minute for the month. Plainview at 18 gallons a minute for the month, and then even Willow Springs dropped from what we saw in September, average flow of 17 gallons per minute for the month. There was an issue Plainview Lift Station where it failed to register on October 28th. So when they went to reset it the next day, it just added a total to the next day. So if you looked at October 29th, the flows are gonna look higher, but that's why. Any questions on that part? Moving on, Richmond School Lift Station, lift station runtime total for the month was 41.9 hours. Or an average of about 0.6 hours for pump one, 0.7 hours for pump two. The well reading for the school for the month was 48,000 gallons. The month prior, should say in September, was 44,400. So again, remains in line with what we saw the prior month when school was in session. And again, the calculated sewer flow that you see on the report, that was 99,600, but again, we go off the well reading. We are just wrapping up that overall floor plan I talked about. Once we have it done, we'll be meeting with Adam to go further inspect the school and start creating an as-built off of that combined plan. One other thing with Richmond School, after my report got submitted, I got a phone call from the village engineer for Sussex. She had an odor complaint from the new subdivision down the road from the school. She had thought at one point there was chemicals added to the lift station, so I checked with Mike. Mike just gave me some invoices back from 2018. Chemicals were added at one point in time to
Oh,
that
yeah.
station.
Right after the initial complaint, after it started up, it was pretty bad, so bad that that sheet metal shop that was in the business park across 164, it drove them out of there. That's how bad it was. Their vent wasn't working on their sewer system. And so they started adding biox or something at the lift station. They're not doing that anymore.
I told Mike when I called him, and I see the tank and I see stuff there, but since I've worked here and that was 2019, it's never been used. So I will reach out. He gave me the invoice. The person that supplied that prior was Martel Water Treatment. So I'll at least reach out to them and I can contact some other chemical vendors too and at least get prices.
Well, and that's totally their cost. It should be rich.
Was it 65.35?
I don't know why. It was initial because that stuff sat in that pipeline all the way over to Sussex for so long. By the time it got to the business park manhole where it dumped in, it was really, really ripe. Now with Redford Hills in there now, if some of those homes now are starting to detect it.
I know when they made the connection, when they cut that about 2,000 feet off that force main, I made a connection for that subdivision. Secret, the assistant to Judy in Sussex, she called and said there was a strong, they had a pretty ungodly odor there at that manhole. But since that time, I had never heard anything until Judy just called. So I'll look into that. I'll have more next month. Any questions of Richmond School?
No, the sooner we can get something going over there, this drags out much longer. Didn't we have them, didn't you send them a letter, Kathy, since we have a new guy there doing maintenance? Weren't we gonna resend them the letter? Yeah. Okay. I just want to drag this out any further.
Do you have any idea what that will cost on?
If the equipment's already there.
Were these were the two invoices for 2018? Okay, so it looks like we get filled twice a year and it's about 15, this is back in 2018, but it's about $1,500 there.
It's not cheap.
Correct.
It's probably twice that much right
That's
now,
for-
assuming the pump still works.
I'm assuming 275 is 275 gallons we take. So,
Okay, thank you.
Speaking of that letter, did we get a response on that?
We got a response from the village brainstorm.
How long did we,
We sent that out right when you first.
Probably the second month he was there or something, I can follow up with Adam.
I mean, now that we have more bodies at the fire station, it's gonna be interesting what we see for flows from the fire station in the next couple of months. Because there's what, 5 people there now? I saw 5 vehicles there the other day when I drove by,
yes, fine.
where before there wasn't, it was sporadic.
Well, that's the next item in my report. The water usage for the month was down about half from what we saw the month prior. So in September, it was about 7,700 gallons. In October, it's 3,900.
It's gonna go back up again.
And then the last thing is Casey's, the month of October is just shy of 24,000 gallons. The month of September is about 22,000, so remains in check, even what we've seen in 2023. Other than that, that's it, unless there's any questions.
You may just send another letter to Richmond, just even just asking for acknowledgement. All right, any questions for Don? Moving on to Mike.
We had sent out 43 delinquency letters warning that to be turned over to property tax. We received the number of payments between the warning and the turnover to 29 accounts that we turned over to property tax. The Figures hotline and the commercial customers have been notified of the change of address. We've notified the post office to close the PO box effective November 30th. And they'll be forwarding for 1 year to the town hall of all the mail coming in. So the reason we're shutting it off on November 30th is that's the end of our current contract. Didn't make sense to make a payment for another 6 months. And it gives us a chance to get the people notified. We're going to, during the month of December, any payments that come in that were originally sent to the PO box and a forward and what we send the other change of address. That would be mostly the people that use bank checks, that they set the payments up and that they're not paying attention to the fact that the remittance advice on the village changing. So we're going to send them a letter letting them know that they have to go in and change them. Otherwise, the process of the payments and people are going to get the charges that they could get. We also find that if anybody on the delinquency list that was turned over any checks that we received where they are leaked and they miss off, what we do is we contact people and give them an opportunity to have us return the check or apply it to their account or credit balance so that they don't feel that they're getting double hit. Last year, there were about 10 clients that, putting that for us. We can do that again. December. And then the INI out of the land and interceptor, the charge dropped to 173 gallons from the 576 in the prior month. I'm not really sure why.
Can you remind me again, does that come from Landon or does that come from Sussex?
Comes from Sussex. What it is that Sussex makes the measurements of the various meter readings along the land and interceptor, and then they compare that to the reading that is flowed into the treatment plant. So any volume above what they accounted for through their meters, they call that INI, and they divide it pro rata between land and Lisbon and Menominee Falls.
Any questions for Mike? Next, new business, presentation. We'll go with Joe Beetzel. From Sewer Pack, we'll discuss the process and timeline to change the Lisbon sewer service area. Thank you.
Did you want me to give any background history, why the commission
Yes, please.
gets involved in these matters? So, I'm struggling to decide how far back to go. Ultimately, it goes back to Clean Water Act. So that's a federal law that gives very vague directions on putting together regional plans or area-wide plans for publicly owned sewage treatment plants. Doesn't provide a lot of details, directs the states to come up with more details of what that actually means. The state has statutes and administrative codes that provide those details. Essentially, the combination of the federal law and the state law is saying that for all publicly owned sewage treatment plants, there has to be a identification of the area to be served, and that area to be served has to address both cost effectiveness and environmentally sound collection and treatment of sewage. So those are the two main things. There's other details in there, but those are the two main things. And then that's pretty much in the statutes. And then in the administrative codes, it goes into even more details, talks about identifying the regional planning commissions, if there are one, to prepare these plans. Identifies what's called sewer service areas, which is the actual boundary of these sewer service areas tributary to the treatment plant. Has a requirement that there be plans prepared for each of these sewer service areas. They be updated every 10 years. They talk about and address cost effectiveness, environmentally sound collection and treatment of sewage, including the development that those pipes and treatment plants serve. And then they identify environmentally sound being in part no potential significant adverse water quality impacts from the development that's being served with these sewers. And then they identify what those areas are. So in the state's administrative code, it talks about it includes, but is not limited to wetlands, floodplains, shorelands, areas of poor soils, steep slopes, all that kind of stuff. So that's in the administrative code. So that's uniform across the state. They identified areas within the state that had to do this. We were identified, the Southeast Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission was identified as the agency responsible for preparing these plans for all of Southeast Wisconsin for the publicly owned sewage treatment plants. So we prepared and completed and adopted that regional plan that talked about all this stuff. All the maps, all the process that would be used to amend this even goes into other components that weren't required by the state statutes and administrative codes, but were related, sludge management and all that kind of stuff, in 1979. So from 1979 to now, we've been doing these sewer service area plans, which are amendments of that regional plan. And it was a big deal for us to do it that way, because not everybody does it that way. Because when we did that regional plan, there wasn't a lot of local input. That regional plan was mostly done by us at a big scale, without the knowledge of the local issues and capabilities and all that kind of stuff. So it is a big deal for us that we do these amendments and have these sewer service area plans, not only adopted by us as an amendment to the regional plan, but also adopted by the local community. The DNR agrees with that process and approach and has since the beginning. And it's also spelled out in our regional plan that we were going to do that. We knew as we were finishing up that regional plan that it's not going to work so well if we don't get some involvement from the local communities. So we identified that it had to be, all these future amendments had to be adopted by the local community, and then the DNR would take final action. So our role in this still, even with all those state statutes and administrative codes, our role is still advisory. It says we have to prepare these plans, we have to give these recommendations. The communities, and because it's in that regional plan, the communities have to adopt these also. But all of that is recommendations to the DNR. The DNR has the final say on all this stuff. Part of my spiel always is, though, for these kinds of issues, is it's a little bit different than what we normally do. If we're working on a park plan or a comprehensive plan, our role is purely advisory. Communities can totally ignore everything we say if they wish. On these sewer service area plans and the amendments, it's legally the same thing. You can ignore everything that we recommend. However, we've been doing this since 1979. In all those years, the DNR's only disagreed with us a few times. they still have the final say, but they almost always, the vast majority of the time, agree with our recommendations. So you can still disagree with us, you could still ignore us, but then odds are you're just gonna be wasting a lot of time spinning your wheels. Because ultimately the DNR is gonna say, yeah, you should have been doing what sewer PAC said. So that's what our role is. We do take this seriously, so we do have this process in place that I'll talk about next for these sewer service area amendments. We do think it's very important that not only we adopt this as an amendment to our regional plan, but that the community adopt it as well. There are a few things that we require in the process that aren't required by that regional plan or aren't required by the state law, administrative codes or statutes, and I'll mention those when I get to those. So that's the big picture about why we're involved. Any questions? I would add too that there's other regional planning commissions that do this also, and they do it a little bit different based on whatever their regional plan says. Sometimes they prepared the regional plan themselves. Sometimes the DNR prepared the plan for them. Sometimes it was some kind of hybrid or it was a combination of both. So each one of these regional plans for different parts of the state are a little bit different, but they all follow the same state statutes and administrative codes. So if no questions on that background and history, so then diving into these sewer service area amendments. So we always understood from the very beginning, and the administrative code does too, that things change over time. Communities grow, the sewage treatment plant capacity changes, sewage effluent requirements and laws change, development patterns change. You might not even be really growing that much, but the direction, the type of growth might be different than anticipated. Might have impacts on the size and location of the sewage pipes or the capabilities of the treatment plant. So we knew that. So that's a big part of the reason why we want to do these amendments. The administrative code says they have to be updated every 10 years. There's no enforcement for that. There's communities that have plans that are more than 20 years old. But that is one of the criteria that we use for recommending whether you do a full update and do the whole plan over again, or just do an amendment looking at that one spot that you want to change. That's one of the criteria we look at is if your plan is more than, in this case, Sussex's plan would be more than 20 years old. It's not, it's 13 years old. It's getting close though. So it's not a big deal, the age of their plan yet. So that's one of the things that would say, you probably don't have to do a full update, but I'll mention some of the other ones in a minute. So we take that into account that things change. We encourage these full updates. We're okay usually with these amendments. We understand we wouldn't want anybody to be doing a full update every 5 or 10 years. That's way too much, but every 10 or 20 years would be nice. And then we push it really hard if it's more than 20. So that's one of the criteria that we look at for these amendments. Again, the primary focus of these plans, we stopped looking at the other things like the, sludge disposal and things like that. We just focus on the sewer service area boundary. What is the proper boundary for that community or that sewage treatment plant? And identifying those environmentally significant areas within that sewer service area, which because of that one administrative code shouldn't be developed because of the potential for adverse water quality impacts. And that would be our environmental corridors. So that's the two main things. It's not the only things of these amendments and the sewer service area plan address, but those are the two main things. The boundary of the sewer service area and the location of those environmental corridors. So that anywhere in that sewer service area outside the environmental corridors, you're eligible for public sewers. Doesn't mean you have to get them. Have to, how you get them, when you get them, the timing of that kind of stuff is up to the local community and your ordinances and rules. So you'll usually have, ordinances and rules that talk about when a sewer pipe is adjacent to the property, then they have to hook up. And they may have a certain amount of time before they have to hook up. And maybe they can defer their payments. That's your details. Rarely does the DNR get involved in those. We don't get involved in those. Yes, we sit in these meetings, we hear communities talk, if somebody pushes hard enough, I can say, yeah, I know what a couple other communities do. If you want to compare yourself to them, I can give you some tips and thoughts and stuff, but yeah, we don't formally do anything along the lines of what is your policy going to be for when people have to hook up? Yeah, I can tell you what some other communities do, but it's still what you decide. It's up to you. So it's primarily those two topics that everybody gets concerned about, that is, how do we do this amendment? When do we have to do this amendment? And maybe, do we have to do a full update? So that's where I'll go next, unless there's questions so far. Okay. So then, usually what happens is, always what happens, is the community comes to us. They somehow found out, because if it doesn't happen often, there's staff turnover. And it's easy to forget that you have to do a sewer service area amendment, but somebody eventually will say something. Sometimes it's a developer, sometimes it's a former staff member, current staff member just happens to see a plan from us and what the heck is this? So anyways, the community usually comes to us like this, saying, we're interested in expanding our sewer system to this one area. Somebody told us it's not inside that sewer service area. What does that mean? What it means is that you can't expand the sewers to that area until it's inside in an adopted sewer service area. Adopted by us, adopted by the community. In the case where the treatment plant is owned by somebody else, approved by them. It doesn't have to be adopted by them, but it has to be approved by them, and then approved by the DNR. Once all those steps are done, then you can extend the sewers into that new area. And then the process at that point, I'll just touch on real briefly, but if you have questions, I can answer. Is sewer extension reviews are done by us as well. Same thing, advisory only. There's an administrative code, actually two administrative codes that say that we're supposed to, the RPCs, the regional planning commissions, if there are one, has to look at all the sewer extensions to make sure that it's consistent with these sewer service area plans and these regional water quality management plans. And again, the same thing, the two main issues. One is that sewer pipe inside the sewer service area, the adopted sewer service area, and is it pipe and the development it's to serve outside these environmental corridors. Now, we don't say that there's no allowance for encroachment or development in the corridors. We've never thought that if we put that hard and fast of a line, that would be more than the state law is requiring. It talks about the potential for significant adverse water quality impacts. It doesn't say any potential impact, no matter how small. The law does not say that. So there are things that our plans, our policies, our guidelines do allow. So roads and utilities can cross these environmental corridors to get to the other side. That's allowed. It's just not allowed that, well, now that you got the pipe going through, let's put houses on both sides in this corridor. No, that would not be allowed. There's also a large lot, single family residential, 5 acres or larger, that would be allowed in these areas. There are sometimes certain institutional and recreational uses that could be allowed in these areas. We even allow on a case-by-case basis, small encroachments into the upland portions of these corridors on the edges. So we do allow some encroachment, some development in these areas. So it's totally off limits. So that will often be, if you have one of these areas, one of these environmental corridors in the area that you're trying to add to your sewer service area, that adds a whole nother level of complexity to the amendment. If your plans, your comprehensive plan and your ordinances already somehow reflect something very similar to the corridors, it's not a big deal. You just tell us that, and then we'll assume that you're not going to touch it. And then it doesn't make that sewer service area amendment or plan any more complicated, which means it takes longer. If you say, yeah, we don't believe in that stuff, we're preparing a comprehensive plan for the town of Cedarburg. They don't have public sewer yet, but they would like to, and they don't want to protect any of these corridors. And as long as they don't get public sewer, they don't have to. But if they do get public sewer, they will have to. So then we had to convince them of all of that, show them and their attorney where that was in the state statutes and administrative codes, and And then ultimately we said, and if you don't want to do that, then we're not gonna finish this plan for you, you're gonna have to do it yourself. And they said, no, we'll talk to our attorney some more. And they finally came back and said, yeah, we'll put something in the plan, and if we get public sewer, we'll protect those corridors just in that part of the community that has the public sewer. So it does come up, not everybody likes it, not everybody has it reflected in their plans and ordinances. But it is the law. But our recommendations, I keep going back to that, are only recommendations, our plans are only recommendations, even though it's adopted by us, adopted by you, it's the DNR that has the final say. So in this particular instance, there is one of these isolated natural resource areas in the area, the 150-acre area, a portion of one of these isolated natural resource areas. It's one of our corridors. We have 3 types. Primary environmental corridor is the one that's usually the largest, usually most important, usually has the most natural resource features overlapping one another. Usually the strictest, the hardest, and most difficult to be able to do something in. The isolated natural resource areas, these smaller ones, usually not as many natural resource features, usually not as important. So it's usually easier to get more stuff in, particularly in the upland areas. In the upland portions, our recommendations are it's up to you guys. But the lowland portions, which would be the wetlands, floodplains, shorelands, and any adjacent steep slopes, those parts would still have to be protected. But any woodlands, wildlife habitat, any of that kind of stuff, that part would be up to you guys if you wanted to develop it or not. It looks like from our information, which is old and not field verified, it's probably mostly upland woods. So probably most of that area could be developed if that's what you guys want. But if there would be any wetlands, floodplains, shorelands, or adjacent steep slopes in that area, then that part would have to be protected. Rest of the area doesn't have any of these corridors, that would not be an issue. For the rest of that area, it would be just primarily focused on doing an amendment to add that to the Sussex sewer service area. So then those are the main topics that we address. It starts with your request to us. Once you give us a request in writing, it does have to be in writing. It doesn't have to come from the village board or the village president. If you've authorized senior staff to make those kinds of requests, that's fine with us too. So sometimes it does come from the village clerk or village administrator. If your community is comfortable with that approach, that's good enough for us too. But we do need it in writing, a request for that sewer service area. As you don't own the sewage treatment plant, then a similar request would have to come from Sussex, and that could come from Judy. But if they wanted to bring it or have it come from somebody else, that's up to them. But from somebody like her would be good enough for us. Once we get those both in writing, then we would take a look at it. We hopefully within a couple of weeks provide you some preliminary comments. I'll let you know. It looks like everything is there that we need. If there's anything major missing, we would let you know. And then we would start reviewing it. If anything major was missing, then we wouldn't start working on it until we got those major things. If it's something small and little, then we'll start working on it and just wait for you to get us that. So we'll provide you some comments within a couple of weeks or a few weeks. Then when we have a draft done, we'll send it to you first for staff review. Once staff has finished reviewing it, provide whatever comments or questions you have. We'll go over those with you, make any changes that we need to, and then it becomes available for everybody else. So then we would share it with Sussex. You could share it with anybody else that you wanted to. And it's at that time that then I would say, okay, I'll give you my best guess of when this is going to hit a potential public hearing. There would have to be a public hearing, when it could be adopted by you guys, when it could be adopted by us, and when it could be sent to the DNR. I would give you that remaining time frame at that time after we get the comments from village staff and we start sharing it with everybody else. The requirement for that public hearing is required by state law. So it's not one of the things that we added. There has to be a public hearing for every one of these amendments. It's held by the local community, but I'll be there. to answer questions like, just like this, or to present, if you want me to give a presentation. And then if there are no objections, no concerns related to sewer service area stuff, you guys could, the village board, and it's usually at the village board, they could act that night to adopt it. If there are any concerns, opposition, whatever, related to public sewer stuff, then we would recommend take no action. Let's look at their concerns and see if they're valid and see if there's can be something done to address them. And then, hopefully then you would be able to adopt it. Then it would go to our next available, planning and research committee meeting. We have a committee that makes recommendations on these first. And they meet quarterly. And then the following month, it would go to our full commission and they would be the ones adopting it as an amendment to our regional plan. Then during that time frame, then somewhere in that time frame before our full commission adopts it, we'd have to hear back from Sussex as well. Saying, again, they don't have to adopt it, but they would have to at least approve it. And we've even had people say, well, if we can't agree to approve it, would it be okay if we just say we're not in opposition to it? And yes, theoretically, if we had to do it that way, that probably would work. We prefer it not that way, but so then they actually did have enough support to approve it, but they did ask that question. So that's like the process. The public hearing, that's all that's required. There is no requirement for open house or anything like that. If it's a very contentious issue, then you might want to. The other thing that is the thing that is required by our commissioners, but not by the law, consistency with the local comprehensive plan. It is really important to our commissioners that whatever you're asking for in that amendment is consistent with your comprehensive plan. Primarily, your comprehensive plan would say, we want sewer development in that general location. It has to be consistent, which means it doesn't have to match. Because when you wrote that comprehensive plan, you might not have known the exact boundaries of that new future sewer service area. So it just has to be close. And the land uses that you envision in that area have to be similar to what's being proposed in the sewer service area amendment. Because we do look at sewage flows. And so we need to know the land uses. And if it's residential, we even need to know what the density is. So we can convert that information, the future sewage flows, and then find out if that causes any problems with the major conveyance system, which is usually just lift stations and force mains. We don't look at the local gravity sewers and the sewage treatment plant. And then if there are problems with that, then yes, that would cause the sewer service area amendment to be tabled until those issues can be resolved. If it's an issue that's going to be a problem in the future, then we just need something in writing that you guys are going to take care of that. It's going to be part of a future facility plan amendment, that kind of stuff. If it's a problem that's going to occur in the near future, then it might have to be started. Like you'll have to concurrently work on a facility plan to take care of that issue, because now you're adding a large enough area. You need a new lift station, or you need a lift station, you didn't have one before, whatever. If it's more imminent and that's all a case-by-case decision, then you might have to do the facility plan and the sewer service area plan at the same time. So then that would mean that we would stop working on the sewer service area plan. You guys would start working on the facility plan. And then when they got to be together timing wise, then they both would move forward. That does happen once in a while, not very often, but it does. If it does happen, that's going to be a big time difference. It's going to take a lot longer to finish all that stuff. Sometimes we'll have instances where the local comprehensive plan didn't anticipate sewer growth in that area. Then you'll have to amend the plan. But it could be a simple amendment. You don't have to do the whole plan over. You can just do a simple amendment saying page 14 of our plan and map 6 will now show and say that this part of the community is going to get public sewer, and it's going to be these land uses, which happen to be the same as what you told us when we calculated the sewage flows. That's all. So that is pretty easy to do. Those are the main issues that would come up that pertain directly to the sewer service area plan. Other things will come up. I've been in communities where there'll be a lot of neighbors that are opposed to the particular development. Truck traffic, noise, lights, hours of operation. Those things are valid concerns of the neighbors, but has nothing to do with the sewer service area. So then I would mention that, or village staff would mention that, and then I would be nodding my head yes. And then you guys could go ahead and adopt that amendment anyway, even though you had a room full of people that were opposed, because that's a different topic. That's not part of the sewer service area plan. So that's the general process for all these sewer service area amendments. Then the part I was gonna mention next, unless you guys had some questions, is the difference between the amendment and the full update. So the full update takes a lot longer and updates everything. So it is a benefit to the community if you're growing, and the faster you're growing, the more benefit to do a full update. Because we have guidelines and standards for how large these sewer service areas can be. Partly based on the capability of the facility, of the findings of the facility plan, the recommendations of the facility plan, and the capabilities of the treatment plan, but also based on population projections. That's one of the requirements of the state law, that these sewer service areas have to be based on population projections. So we have those, we do that for all the plans that we do. So we use those population projections. If the new area, and we do that analysis for all amendments as well. If that new area, and it's just population, we look at industrial development, all that kind of stuff separate. If the new area added to the large total area puts that population of that area over our projection, which goes out to 2050 right now, and it's more than 10% over, we can't recommend approval of it. We wouldn't adopt it. It wouldn't be consistent with the state law. So then where that comes into play, then you'd have to do a full update, because then we would update your population projections. We would take into account the development that's already occurred. Because we look at, if you don't know what's going to happen somewhere, we just make some assumptions on the vacant developable land. So we use all that kind of stuff to come up with how many new people are going to be in this new area. And hopefully, if we update everything, then you have more room to grow. And that generally is the case. It's only sometimes some communities have been growing so slow for so long, now their population projections reflect that. And now if they are suddenly growing fast, there could be a problem. That was the issue for Foxconn and Racine and Kenosha. But there was a way, they found a way to get it done anyway. So even though that was mostly industrial development. So we do look at those things. So that's one of the triggers, is if you fall outside our population projection range, then you may have to do a full update. If it's not consistent with the facility plan, meaning the facility plan says one thing, and now this sewer service area amendment is saying something else. If it's significant, then that's another reason why you may have to do a full update. Another one is if it's an addition of 1,000 acres or more, or an enlargement of 10% or more of the current sewer service area. Those are just guidelines. Where they came from, it's the numbers the DNR uses for their more thorough reviews. So if it hits 1,000 acres or 10% increase, the DNR looks more closely at these amendments. So that's the criteria that we use to determine if we're doing just an amendment or a full update. So those are the main criteria, the ones that come into play most often. So that would be the differences. And then again, the amendment is just looking at the one area you're asking for. The full update looks at the entire sewer service area. Depending on the details, I have not thought about it enough. I would have to put together in my head all the stuff that's happening. Theoretically, that could be just to do all of just the Lisbon part, or all of the Lisbon and Sussex part, or it could be all of the Lisbon, Sussex, Menominee Falls, and everybody else part. We'd have to figure that out. We'd have to find out, put our heads together, what everybody else is proposing, because Menominee Falls is making some changes right now as we speak. They have agreed to do a full update. Theirs is a little bit different. They have part that goes to MMSD, part that goes to Sussex, and a very small part that goes to Brookfield. So their sewer service area has three colors. One color, I think it's blue, that goes to Brookfield. Red or orange goes to MMSD, and then the other color goes to Sussex. So theirs is a little bit different. That's the part that they would be doing a full update to. If Sussex has any problems with that, or if we think it's not consistent with their facility plan significantly, then it could trigger a full update of Sussex's plan as well. So far, we haven't seen that, but we've only started working on it. Yes.
So if I may, where is Menominee Falls in their quest?
So they have,
And who's doing it?
so we're doing it, the amendment. They've requested the full update reluctantly. They gave us most of the information we need. We think we have all the big pieces that we need. But we haven't really done much review yet. The guy, I'm training two people to be able to do this kind of stuff. And the guy who I gave this one to, because we're also doing a full update for Germantown as well. The other guy is doing that one. The guy who's working on Menominee Falls was also finishing up the Racine County plan. And that's done now. So he'll be able to devote most of his time on the amendment. So we still have to do that part where we prepare a draft for village staff. That's where we're at.
Okay, where is Sussex in their facility planning?
They say that the addition of all of this area in Menominee Falls that would be tributary to Sussex is not accounted for in their facility plan and is not accounted for in their agreements or capacity in the plant. However, they both communities agree that development's going to happen in the far distant, that trigger point will be in the distant future.
Okay,
So we have to double check that statement. And if at some point in the distant future, we'll just say something in the plan. If we say, nah, we disagree, we think it's sooner rather than later, they might have to start facility planning now.
what I'm concerned about is just looking myopically at Sussex. You have all this stuff in Menominee Falls. You add in the stuff for Lisbon, you add in what's going on in Landon. I just drove down there the other day. I didn't realize they're adding all that housing along the interceptor in through there because I haven't been down there for 5 years. Plus the Lisbon stuff may fill the picture over, and here we go.
Yep.
See, what I'm getting at is if you add up Menominee Falls and Landon and Lisbon, at what point does this trigger Sussex to say time out because the Regional Planning Commission and DNR says stop, we're at the tipping point, we're over that, we're gonna start all over and do the whole darn thing. That's what I don't believe you can answer that question because you don't know when it's gonna happen, but we may be in that very precarious position where we could push the whole thing over or they could.
Yep. We do have rules of thumb. So the rule of thumb would be if they're gonna reach some kind of capacity limit or significant non-compliance or conformance with their facility plan, within the next 5 to 10 years, they have to start the facility plan now.
Yes,
And we're gonna stop working on the sewer service area. That's 5 to 10 years. If that tipping point's gonna happen within,
that's
and it's gotta
very,
be
very,
significant.
it's
If
very
it-
quickly.
If the tipping point is just, one lift station needs to be replaced, that's not significant. Whole bunch of lift stations, major components in the sewage treatment plant. Possibility that sewage effluent might not meet state standards. Things like that are significant. 5 to 10 years from now, probably would stop the sewer service area amendment for everybody. 10 to 20 years, we're gonna say something in the plan. We're gonna want some kind of written commitment that you guys will start the facility planning very soon.
Because if you're talking 5 years, I mean, I've done these before. If you're talking 5 years, that's like zero. It's like, it's 2 or 3
It's almost
year
like-
project for that
Yeah.
size of facility plan, if you go really, really hard at it on the whole thing. What I'm getting at is Lisbon, what Lisbon is looking at right now may be not that big of a deal. But if you add in A plus B plus C, because it all goes to Sussex, we may be going down the road and all of a sudden we're told to stop. Everybody's got to stop because you got to wait for Sussex to take in all of these pieces because they're a regional facility.
Yeah.
So I just want people to hear that. I mean, we may be marching down the road, really going and getting everything done, and all of a sudden, the last minute, it's time out.
So we won't know for sure, well, we won't know for sure until way down the road probably. But we'll have to make a decision sooner rather than later for now. So what happened is whichever one of these amendments get to the point where we double check the sewage flows with the capacity of the treatment plant. We did one amendment for you guys, it was 1 acre.
Right.
Yeah, an amendment like that, we'll do that, even in the middle of an emergency. 150 acres is different. So when whichever one of these amendments or full updates gets to the part where we review the sewage flows, the allocation of agreements between the communities and the capacity of the treatment plant and what the facility plan says. Laura Herrick of our staff is the one who does that part, not me. If she comes back, whenever she gets to the first one, that'll be our trigger point. She'll say, Joel, we got a problem here. Or she's gonna say, yeah, none of this is gonna be a problem for 20 or 30 years. Then we'll be okay. So whichever one gets to that point first is gonna trigger that initial review from us. And so then, if that's the case, you know, we won't immediately stop that day. We'll let everybody know, hey, this is what we found, this is the data we used. Did we miss something? Did we have wrong data? You know, whatever. We'll give everybody a chance to argue their case and then take that under advisement. And then if it's like, oh, crap, yep, nope, that's the right stuff to use. We reluctantly agree with your findings. We don't think it's a big deal though, but yeah, that's what you found is probably right. Yeah, then we'll have to decide if this is now the amendments stop and you have to catch up with the facility plan, or we just have to say something in the plan itself and get some kind of something in writing from everybody that yeah, we're gonna do this. You know, I'll suggest like before the next amendment request, before it becomes a problem. If it's a little bit more imminent, I've seen where we've had dates where we would need something in writing from all the communities saying by this year, they'll start the facility plan, by this year, they'll have a draft done, and by that year, it's gonna be done. That's when it starts to get bad, but not bad enough that we have to stop the amendments.
But then you run into the problem where all of a sudden you have this 5-year timeline as an example, and you have this agreement between all the parties that they're gonna abide by this timeline. The problem is, and I've run into this, DNR says, too bad, so sad. You submit to me a set of sewer plans, I'm not gonna approve it because there's no approved facility plan amendment to accommodate this. At the end of the day, it comes down to sewer down
The
to
DNR.
DNR.
Yep.
And
But there are instances where they have agreed with that approach too. So I would still say the odds are in your favor. But at some point, that time frame is getting so tight, yes, they're more likely, even if we would reluctantly say, you guys have come up with a good plan. It's a potentially a problem more imminent than we're comfortable with, but you've come up with a good plan, we'll go along with it. The DNR could be overruling us on that, sure.
right,
It's happened before. Like I said, they usually agree with our recommendations. The vast majority of the time they do, but they haven't always. And it's all across the board. There's a few times they've disagreed with us on the environmental corridor stuff. There's a few times they've disagreed with us on the size or the shape of the sewer service areas. Because I didn't mention that there's criteria that we use, no holes, no islands, that kind of stuff. There's unique situations, yes. But generally speaking, no holes or islands in sewer service areas. But there's been a few times they've disagreed with us. And the consistency between the facility plan and the sewer service area plan. There's administrative codes that require us to review and comment on facility plans too. We don't prepare the facility plans, though. We prepare these sewer service area plans. But an engineer, other than us, has to prepare the facility. We just have to review it and provide our recommendations to you guys and to the DNR.
Do you know what the status of Sussex, what their plan is right now?
Nope. Although we just heard back a short email from Judy saying that, yes, adding all that area from Menominee Falls would be more than the plant can handle and is not covered by the current agreement. But they agree with the village of Menominee Falls that this is not going to be a problem for a long time. So we got that statement from her in writing, but now we have to verify that for ourselves. We're not to that point yet, but we could be quick because the guy who's working on it will be working on it shortly.
Okay.
Putting serious time into it. So he'll trigger when he starts to get to the part where we need her data, then we'll push her to do her review.
But she hasn't started on it yet.
She's called them and gathered information.
Okay.
I don't know if she's got everything she needs, but I don't think she's looked at it yet. I know she's contacted them and asked for some information.
I don't know. The question really comes down to, is she engaged somebody to do this yet? Because that's really an indicator that they're serious about it.
And nothing I've heard says that. The other thing, and I still need follow up too, is the email that Laura, the one that looks at the facility plan side of things, talked about just impacts on the facility and the treatment plant and consistency with the facility plan. That was what her email to Sussex was. I forgot to mention to her, although it's really my responsibility, I'll have to follow up with my own email, just ask, do you, Sussex, have any plans to expand your area in addition to what Menominee Falls
Yeah.
and Lisbon are doing? There's not that much areas they could grow probably, but I haven't looked at it closely. But I know, if they didn't mind picking up some existing unsewered subdivisions in a sewer service area amendment, they probably could find enough vacant developable land maybe to make it worth their while. So nobody's asked them that question yet, as far as I know. I know I have not, and I have to. So that could be another piece of the puzzle too.
Yeah, I mean, pretty soon you add up A and B and C and D, and all of a sudden the bucket is over. And
Yep.
it doesn't make any difference, and it holds everybody up. That's what
So
happens.
So for absent that happening, so that does not become a problem, or it's a problem far enough in the future that we don't have to slow down or stop the amendment. We probably have a section, a paragraph that talks about this potential problem happening in the future. And that would add a little bit of time, but we've done it before. It's not going to add a lot of time. The only thing I would worry about is if it's more of an in-between, because if it's a long time in the future, nobody has to commit to anything yet. We'll need something in writing just from staff saying, yeah, we'll look at it, sooner rather than later. It's when you have to commit to something like time frames, then everybody would have to be on the same page. That could take a while to get everybody on the same page. That could, even though it could be accomplished, we have a path ahead of us. Everybody's generally supportive, but now you're putting something on paper that everybody has to be consistent with. And yeah, that could add a lot of time. That could slow down an amendment too. But only if it's more that 10 to 20 year time frame kind of thing. That could be a significant addition of time, but wouldn't necessarily stop the amendment. If it's more than 20 years in the future, we're just going to add some standard language and just need some acknowledgement from staff that they're aware of the situation, and we'll address it sooner rather than later. That's it. But yeah, I won't be able to know for sure until we start at whichever one of these gets to that point first, where we double check all that information ourselves. My guess would be we're talking months, not weeks, but not years. Nobody wants their amendment to take that long. So I would say later this winter, first thing spring, we should have an answer on one of these. So yeah, if there is a problem, then I would share it with everyone. If there's no problem, then I wouldn't.
Is it possible for, because the village of Lisbon isn't on paper yet, I mean, we're just starting this whole thing, that the village could be added to that correspondence chain so we know what's going on as it occurs? Because right now, we don't have anything in front of Sussex. And we, some of these other ones are working, but just so we can be kept in the loop, the village can, to our new administrator, so that we know what's going on, because it does impact us, because if something happens, it impacts what we may or may not be doing.
Yep. No, we'll share that information with everybody. It's all the local units of government are our partners, clients, customers, whatever you want to call it. You're all important to us. In this particular process, yes, the entity that owns that plant has an edge. They do. And I don't want to play games and say that's not true. It is true. The one that owns the plant has an edge. But other than that, we try to treat you all the same. So yeah, we'll share the information. And if you're not hearing something, you can always just periodically shoot me a phone call or an email. And then I'll respond to that too. So absent any known for sure problems, I would not recommend or advise stopping your potential sewer service area amendment request. I would continue to proceed. Probably, I would say it puts more importance on having good conversations with Sussex and asking some of these questions that I might be eventually asking myself. You guys could ask some of them. Does Sussex have any ideas for growth for themselves for the sewer service area? Do they, because she's already said that it's in the distant future and it's not consistent with the facility plan or the capacity of the plant, but it's in the distant future. She's not concerned. I guess you don't want to question her statements and piss her off, but you could ask that question that has been asked. What about yourselves? Do you guys expect growth of yourself, and has that been added to the mix?
Plus, there's also intermunicipal agreements between all these entities, which
Yep.
add 2 or 3 more layers of complexity to this.
Yep.
It isn't just how much can the pipe hold, it's what will, because Sussex owns the plant. They are God, so.
Yep.
Okay.
So yeah, and those agreements, that's between you guys as well. We do want copies of that stuff when there are, because we'll take again, we're only looking at the big picture stuff. We're not trying to dive into the details. But looking at the big picture stuff to make sure that, yeah, it looks like you guys are all on the same page and this is what you guys have previously agreed to. Laura, again, usually is the one that does that. And so we're not nitpicking, was it written really well? The loopholes, now we don't do any of that stuff. We just look big picture wise, does it look like it's generally consistent with what everybody is asking for? And if it isn't, then we'll just bring that up. We typically don't talk about it in our sewer service area, then it's behind the scenes kind of stuff. So then other things that would be unique to this situation where there's another community involved because they're the ones that own the plant. So again, it could be a joint public hearing. If you guys get along with one another, it's not a bad idea. Facilitate more conversations about these topics, have a joint public hearing, you guys, Sussex, and then I'll be there. Technically, or we sort of say it's a joint public hearing anyway, because we'll help you out as much as you need. But most communities prefer I just sit back there and keep my mouth shut unless there's questions. But if you need more help than that, we're willing and able to do that. Trying to think anything else along the lines of something different from a normal sewer service area amendment. Having another party in there might take a little bit longer. If they take longer than you to answer a question, that's sort of out of your hands. That could add a little bit more time, but it doesn't have to.
So you said that having the amendment is several months. How long if we had to go back and do the facility plan, the full vote? How long do those typically take? Assuming all the stars align and all the information is provided.
I'm not as knowledgeable about that. I would be confident to say, probably takes longer than the sewer service area. plan. So these amendments take 6 months to 1 year on average. The full updates take 1 to 2 years on average. I know some facility plans, big changes, facility plans can take a lot longer than that. So, but for moderate changes to a facility plan, I am not sure how long that takes. 2 or 3 years. And I don't think anything else related to timing. Like I said, 6 months to 1 year on average for amendments. More time if you want extra public input. You'll probably be closer to the 1 year because we're gonna be looking for comments from Sussex. And they have to at least not object to the amendment. And we'll need that in writing, so definitely it's not gonna be closer to the 6 months, it's gonna be closer to the year.
So if you started out as an amendment for a specific area and decide to pivot and look at the full scale, I mean,
I'll be bumpy.
we're
You
kind
can
of
do
struggling.
that.
It's like, do you do the small stuff or do you just go for the full build out of the village, so to speak?
If if development is imminent and timing is really critical, it's a big deal project for you. Yeah, your village president talks to my boss and we will let you finish your amendment. My recommendation would be, yes, you should probably fold the two and we'll stop this amendment. And do the full update and just merge the two together. That would be my initial knee-jerk response all the time. Just because I'm busy and it's more efficient that way. But I also understand that sometimes, no, this development is critical to the future of the community, whatever. And so then your boss talks to my boss and usually they'll agree, yeah, so we'll continue working on this amendment. And even, you don't even have to go over my head, I'll pass that along, but if you think I won't give the sense of urgency you want to be expressed, yeah, you can call my boss yourself. And that would be the executive director or the deputy director. So our executive director is Stephanie Hacker, she's been there for a little bit over a year. And then Ben McKay is our deputy director, he's been there a while. So yeah, so you can always do that. Especially if it's some issue topic like that. That you understand the process, you understand the effort that's already been put in, but things have changed. This is really important to the community. You want to finish this, you don't want to hold it up because of this other full update. Now that would be okay. Like I said, as long as there's no major problems with the facility plan. The capacity of the treatment plant, that kind of stuff. If there's major problems there, then yeah, my bosses will probably agree with me. No amendment, no update of the full sewer service area plan until that's brought in alignment with that facility plan and whatever problems there were. So again, any differences? I'm thinking not. I took a quick look. I didn't see any other corridors, these environmental corridors. It looked fairly logical extension. You're connecting to the school to the Sussex area, not leaving any holes or islands or anything. And right now that school area is an island. We allowed that. So they must have been having serious problems back then.
They did.
So,
They
yeah,
still do.
major failing septic systems is one of the exceptions to the rule, to have a hole or an island. And then water pollution problems, like everybody's septic system is failing, including the river or the lake or something. So from that standpoint, it looks okay. Like I said, we'll do more thorough review, still cursory preliminary review when we get your submittal. But we'll be looking for that kind of stuff, because the area that you're proposing to add looks strange. Little fingers or something like that. It looked like there might have been a gap, one parcel between the area that's already in the school and the area that was outlined in yellow or cross-hatched in yellow. It looked like a gap. I can leave this map with you guys if you want me to. So that would have to be filled in. That parcel would have to be added. And if it was done on purpose, like that person, we've absolutely refused to be inside the new sewer service area. Yeah, our recommendation is gonna still say they should be in. And then the only thing that I could honestly say is just being in does not require public sewer. At least from state rules or regulations or our regional plans. Now, local ordinances might require him to connect. Some communities will do it in addition to the pipe being nearby. Some communities will say, once you're in the sewer service area, or once you're in MMSD's service area, you have to connect. But then even then, they'll have some kind of exception or variance process. Franklin had that. I didn't agree with their process. I was like, if you're an important person, and then, okay, we'll give you more time. But that's a local decision. So yeah, but we'll look at that kind of stuff. We'll provide those comments when you officially submit. If you really are struggling with a submittal, we'll have meetings and we can go over preliminary drafts and stuff and give you preliminary comments on preliminary drafts. But if you're in any kind of a rush or a hurry, yeah, just put a request together. So we need probably best would be shoot me an email asking for the information that we need. And then I'll reply listing all the information we need. But essentially, we need a map showing the area that you want added. We need the breakdown of the area by land uses. And then if you've already done some analysis on the sewage flows, we'll take it. If it's residential or some of it's residential, we'll need to know the densities or number of lots. And if you don't know, then hopefully it's zoned residential, and that's the zoning that you're gonna follow. We come up with density based on that. Let's see, what else do we need?
But the comp plan, the village's comp plan has to match the submittal.
Has to be consistent. So that doesn't have to be exactly the same, it has to be close.
Yes.
So if there's minor differences in the boundary, that's fine. Minor differences in the land uses, that's fine. It's just gotta be close.
Yes.
And it can be shown in a map, in the text, combination of both. You could have a standalone, just you're adding this information if you have to amend the plan. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. I'm not saying you have to redo the whole plan or a whole chapter or something like that. Just say this is an insert or this will be added to wherever in the plan. Towns will do that. I don't know where this is gonna go. Can we just say it's an amendment to the plan? It's in the plan somewhere. Okay, sure. Those are the main things. I'm missing some other smaller stuff. But I'll reply in the email. And then, so then, like I said, once we get that submittal, if there's nothing major missing, we'll review it in a few weeks, provide you some preliminary comments. If there is nothing major still missing or a problem, then we'll immediately start working on the draft. And then when a draft is done of the maps and the text, we'll share that with staff. I mean, you can still do whatever you want with it, but we prefer that staff looks at it first, make sure they're comfortable with it. And is somewhat knowledgeable about it, because people will be asking you questions. Yes, if the village president wants to see it, you're gonna show it to them. But we prefer keep it close if you can. Don't want to upset anybody if you don't have to, because if we made a mistake, if we missed something, we could fix it and then not upset anybody. But if you have to share it, you have to share it. So then we'll finalize it, have a draft, and that's when it has to be shared with everybody. We'd hope that you were having periodic conversations with Sussex anyway, and they knew this was coming. They'll probably know it's coming when we ask them for information. And the same thing, if they ask for, well, can you keep us apprised of the status with Lisbon? Yes, we will do that too. Anything else? Oh, the bigger area, the larger area that you want to add. Any other questions first before I dive there? No? So yeah, the bigger area, the first thing that caught my eye was, ooh, there's a lot of existing subdivisions here. There's a good chance that there'll be a lot of people in those subdivisions that don't want public sewer. bottom line, that's your decision, not theirs. But I do know, I've worked for the city of Franklin, I know how this works. The mayor will be counting the votes. How many people will not vote for me now if we go ahead with this? And at some point, it's gonna be enough, he said, okay, we're not gonna do it. Might make sense, but we're not gonna do it.
But mapping doesn't mean that it's eminent necessarily,
Nope.
just getting it mapped.
But trying to get people to understand that and calm down is very difficult if they get worked up. So the best thing is if this was percolating for a long time, not too many people got upset about it early on, and now it's becoming more imminent. You're just, and it's being in the sewer service area does not commit anybody to hooking up unless you got an ordinance that says so. The state doesn't require it and our plans don't require it, only if there's something local. It just makes you eligible to get public sewer. The more important part should be when the sewers become adjacent, that's when most communities say, now you pay. Now that pipe is running down the road in front of your property, now you pay. And you may still not have to hook up. Some communities will say you don't have to hook up, you just have to pay. Some, Franklin, for instance, you have to hook up within 10 years. Once that pipe goes across, you got 10 years to hook up. You have to. In the meantime, you're paying. And then you can ask for up to a 10-year deferral. That was Franklin's. So
I thought, excuse me, I thought, once it goes past your property, you have legally 1 year to hook up.
That state law changed a number of years ago.
I did not realize that.
It's local ordinance.
local
Really?
ordinance, as far as I know, local ordinance rules on that topic now.
Different communities have different requirements and different requirements as far as deferment. Some communities, as an example, Oconomowoc, in certain areas, you've got 12 years to hook up and your assessment doesn't start for 12 years. Some places, you, as Joel says in Franklin, you start paying your assessment on day one, but you don't have to hook up for, I don't know, a case down there, it's probably 10 years. I've seen it for 5 years. I've seen it for 8 years. It's all local and whatever it is. And it has to
Thank
do
you.
with, if you defer people paying for, say, 10 years, then the cost of that borrowing is going to be borne by somebody. So they're going to end up, instead of paying $10, going to end up paying $18. And those are obviously facetious numbers because somebody's paying the bank.
Yeah.
So it all fits together and it's all has to be done and figured out ahead of time, because when you pack a building full of people, and I've been at them where there's been
Oh.
500 people there,
Oh, that'd
you
be
better
far.
have the answers and the numbers. And like getting abused.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, and always, when you're making changes or establishing rules or policies like that, involve your attorney. Cause if they gotta be comfortable with her coming up with, because they have to defend it. If there's gonna be people opposed to it, they're either gonna threaten lawsuits or they're really
They
gonna do
will.
it. So you make sure your attorney's involved, make sure they're comfortable. I've heard some communities talking about these, Waterford, for instance, a year or so ago. Their attorney was not interested because they were thinking about creating, they didn't have a policy like this. They wanted to have something. So I talked about all the possibilities and they were thinking, well, yeah, let's have all of those. Well, we'll have, if the pipe is adjacent, if you're in a sewer service area, if not, you start paying right away, but you don't have to hook up right away. You get deferrals. There's variances or exceptions. Let's do it all. You give as much flexibility. And the attorney says, if you do that, it's not going to stand up in court. I'm not going to defend it. Keep it simple. So make sure you talk to your attorney, make sure that he or she is comfortable with whatever you're coming up with. Because yeah, just because the other neighbors do it that way and they haven't been challenged, it could be just because they got lucky. You want to make sure your attorney's aware and is comfortable. Trying to think, oh, the bigger area. So the bigger area, I try to do a quick analysis. Was it 350 acres or something like that? Ooh,
Well,
so-
you take the 150 off, yeah.
Okay.
That's your fine.
It's still under that 1,000. So it might not trigger the full update. It would depend again, it's a case by case call because we'll be looking at how close are these other problems? If it's like, yeah, it's not gonna, the capacity, the facility plan consistency, the capacity of the treatment plant, those problems are 10 to 20 years down the road. I would be leaning towards, let's do a big comprehensive update sooner rather than later. But would I put my foot down and recommend it has to be this one now? I don't know. It's gonna be a case by case now. So clearly I can say it's not enough to automatically trigger a full update. I'll have to look at it in conjunction with everything else that's going on. The issue that you're including a lot of existing subdivisions, we have no problem with that. If that's what you guys, the direction you want to go, we're perfectly fine. If some of those have failing septic systems or potentially failing septic systems, or their systems are getting really old and need to be replaced soon, or they're running out of room for replacement systems, some combination of all that, it's probably a good idea to at least raise that balloon and see what happens. I wouldn't start the amendment until you got some initial, my recommendation would be don't start the amendment for that larger area until you have some feedback from those people. So that you have like, ooh, this is a lot more angry opposition than I was expecting. You can take that under advisement and decide, do you still want to proceed before you start the amendment and really rile everybody up. And then you may also be able to craft, there's certain areas, certain subdivisions that are adamantly opposed, take them out. Other areas that say, it's older, they're almost ready for a new system. They might not object as much to the public sewer. But we'd still have that criteria, no holes, no islands, no funny fingers. But for a reason like this, we'd be a little bit more flexible than normal. And then the bottom line again is we'd still say, remember, being in the sewer service area only makes you eligible, does not make it required that you have to connect. Although it might trigger some additional payments you might have to do with Sussex or something. So I wouldn't want to go hog wild and start adding stuff that is unlikely to ever happen in the foreseeable future. And that would be like within the next 20 years. If you're doing enough work on this and you're thinking, oh, here's some areas that probably won't be connected for 20, 30 years plus, yeah, I'd say leave them out for now. If it's vacant developable land, that's a different story. You can look a little bit further, as long as you don't exceed that population projection, the capacity of the treatment plant kind of stuff. You can add more, then that hopefully avoids the need for doing these amendments. When a development pops in one of those areas, this doesn't slow them down. Because that's the drawback of doing it by amendment by amendment, is sometimes you're not going to know that you need the amendment until the developer's already talking to you about a rezoning and a subdivision plan. And they want it right away. And now they have to wait 6 months or a year or longer for this sewer service area amendment. So you want to avoid that scenario if possible. Usually by, if you got the capacity to add more area to the sewer service area, do it. But yes, we're also planners and we don't want you to go crazy either. Trying to think anything else with the larger area. Probably not much. If it does end up being an amendment, it doesn't change the process. The process is still the same. Just because it's a larger area, it doesn't change anything. If it triggers the full update, there are differences, reasons why it takes longer. Like I said, we'll update all the existing development that's inside the sewer service area, that larger one now. Double check the population projections for the entire community. Update all the environmental corridor delineations. We'll update all that stuff and then share that information with you when we finish. So that's the main reason why that takes longer. Then we look more closely at the facility plan too, for consistency. That's about it. That's my more detailed summary of the process and the issues. Any questions? Otherwise, I'm done.
All right.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Joel.
you.
Yeah, thank you for the explanation.
Welcome.
And you're sticking around for the latter part?
I can, yes, I will.
I think we'll try and keep the next one. Anyone else on 6A have questions? All right, we'll move on to unfinished business 7A. Discussion and necessary action to create a policy. So that's procedure for citizen requests related to speed, street sign and or traffic control issues. So we discussed a few times now at committee meetings, the best way to address citizen complaints regarding roads, signs, and traffic concerns. At the last meeting, we decided to place forms on the website that automatically send the complaints to the appropriate staff. The forms are completed and working on the website. If you look in your packet, there's a bunch of screenshots regarding the process and as well as the complaints examples. If you had a chance, if you're not familiar, you can lodge that. It's actually one of our bubbles on the main screen. It's called Citizen Requests. You log in, you get a few options: a fix-it complaint, general complaints, and traffic enforcement requests. So you do have to log in and then also go through Civic Plus to complete that form, and then it gets routed to the appropriate staff. So
I know it's hard to read some of that writing on those screenshots. I tried to make them as big as I could.
Yep.
But it's kind of cool to play around with it on the website.
yeah, so it is live. I know we've I actually received some feedback during trick or treat that a couple of assistants saw it and they were happy to see that. I think it'll make complaint routing a lot easier for them. So I guess we're not looking for any action, but if get any feedback, that was the time now to provide that.
This one that was passed out was as a result of this, correct? So this is,
Is that the traffic enforcement request?
yeah, the new one
Yes.
from the 14th.
Mhm.
So we, that was actually, yeah, used.
So that came from the sheriff's department?
Yeah,
Yes.
so, we had a person go through, this is all online already.
Yeah.
You can walk through it yourself. Natasha, found these in our package, so she didn't have to recreate them. These are things that have been used around the state for whoever uses his cell.
Kathy, can you put the mic close to you so that comes up on the recording, please?
So Natasha did a nice job getting these done for us. She made it live after the election and we got one person that actually responded. It went directly to the sheriff. And in her response, she had some extra things, which is why she sent it to me and I sent it to Nick to finish it. But after all the discussion, these are the website forms that have been added after our discussion.
My only question is, and maybe it was in the stuff that you sent out to us in previous discussions on this, and we've been talking about this for 6 months or so, is who makes who is the individual that makes the decision? You know, the complaint goes to the sheriff's department. They come back with their report. Where does it go and who makes the decision about who does what? That's the only,
Sheriff makes the decision on any traffic needs.
okay, then how about, but when you say that, Kathy, does that include signing?
Signage comes back to the PW.
Yeah, then some of that, so if it doesn't, it's not an issue for a sheriff, then it goes to Nick. Then Nick decides whether or not it needs to come here for discussion.
Okay, as an example, a stop sign. That Nick, you can't make that decision, correct?
No.
No, that's gotta come back to here, to this committee.
Well, I think it goes back to the warrants is, does it meet the requirements of the MUTCD? And that's gonna be our guiding document. And then he can make a decision whether or not it fits the MUTCD. And if the people still disagree with Nick's decision, then there's an appeal process that it comes back here.
Okay, so you're looking at the MUTCD?
I can look it up. I can look it up, yes.
Okay, I'm just trying to find out what the flow chart is on this whole thing. I think this is great. I appreciate everybody, all the work that's gone into this, because there's been a tremendous amount of work. As long as we have a clear cut flow path or how it goes from A to B to C to D, that's fine. Then there's no question that when somebody isn't happy with the end result, that we can show them, well, here's the process and here's the flow chart that we follow. And this is why you got the answer that you did. Having worked with this situation before, more than I ever wanted to, this is 1,000% better than what we had before in the past.
Thank you.
It gets very, very heated and personal sometimes, as Nick, I'm sure you know. People just don't get it. Sometimes they don't understand. There's reasonings why, and this is, to me, leads to a lot more consistency than we had in the past.
Yeah, so, have we had any fix-it forms submitted yet?
No.
And then, was the Public Works Committee gonna be automatically notified when one comes in? How was, I thought we decided there,
I did not have that on.
I believe we are going to be doing quarterly reports to the committee.
Okay.
Because I can log in on the back end. An administrative login on the website, and I can just pull a report.
okay.
Am I
Is there
not
gonna
recalling that
be,
correct?
is there a reason, or maybe it was already planned to have a short article in the next newsletter, which is coming out, what, next month or something about this?
Our inserts from the.
Tax
the
bills?
Tax bills are already done. We did not say anything about this.
I'm talking about maybe for the next newsletter. I'm just
That won't go
trying
out
to,
till spring.
This spring.
okay. Well, even if we do it then we can at least cut out well, we were never notified about this stuff, because you hear that about everything. I think that'd be a worthwhile
Doesn't
thing.
matter how many times you send them a
I know.
notice. There's
I know,
still-
if you hand it to them, they say, you never gave it to me. I understand. I'm just trying to eliminate some
I'll
of
make,
this.
make note to Natasha.
Okay,
Something should be considered for the next.
Might even want to just put a flyer at the window that says.
you're right, though. No matter how many times you're doing. Okay. I think this is great. I really do appreciate personally all the work that's been put into this. This has been,
Also too, are we gonna get back the policy for this? I think we have to formally approve one.
I saw something somewhere.
Well, yeah, the last time we talked policy, there was 4 of them, and then we narrowed down one that we liked, and then that's when the forms thing came up, and I guess we've never seen one back for a final policy. So-
Yeah, because this says necessary action to create, so I think that's a great idea, just to close the loop on this, that we have maybe at our next meeting, adopt something formally, so we can say we did. Does that require village board approval, or can we do it?
Any other on that? Seven B, discussion necessary action regarding phase one of proposed sewer service area expansion along Lisbon Road and its submittal to sewer pag. I guess we're just looking for something formal, or do we even need to? Is your administrative email gonna suffice for that?
I guess from Joel's presentation, I mean, what's the presentation, I mean, what's the feeling of the committee for submittal to sewer pack?
Well, I don't think we can do anything until we get revisions to the comp plan. Because part of the area that we're looking at is not properly zoned for, we gotta start at the top. And we have to do any plan amendments, which are gonna involve more than this committee. It's gonna involve plan commission, it's gonna involve the village board.
We just did a comp plan amendment.
I know, but does it call for these areas that we're looking at in this area to be sewered? And appropriate, because we can't tell them how many houses we're gonna have out there if we don't have the proper zoning, which means we have to have the proper plan amendment.
Not anymore.
Done. Or actually, Joel.
They can be done concurrently. We do prefer.
Would you come up to the mic since we're on Zoom, please? Thank you.
We do prefer that the comp plan amendment be done first, but that's because we're planners. It'll work if they're done concurrent. We've even had them when they're both on the same village board meeting.
I mean, this is to take, as an example, 100 acres where there's corn growing right now, that is planned for ag and is zoned for something like that. And we're saying that, well, we're gonna sewer this, because we think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, and we're going to put on 150 homes on there. We need to do our homework first and get our ducks in a row first before we get to worrying about sewers on this thing, because that whole process, you can't just do that in a bubble.
Yeah, it depends. If it's consistent with the surrounding land uses and whatever planning you have done for that area. The more consistent it is, the smaller of a different kind of change it is. You can jump into this right away. It's usually when it's, no, you're making a drastic change, you know, like your example, it was planned for ag, it's zoned for ag. There's never been discussions for anything else other than ag here. This is gonna be a shock and surprise to everybody, the village board, plan commission.
The landowner.
Yes. Now, again, remember, you can do this without their support.
I know.
It's not a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
we'll do it one time and it'll be the last time it ever gets done. I just wanna have,
I mean, just to calm that
yeah,
down, is the 2035 land use plan is already suburban density 1 residential.
so we have this all covered already? I've never looked at that.
The ordinance is up on the screen.
For the whole area, Mark?
Yeah, pretty much. There's other open lands to be preserved, which
But that can take on the adjacent.
that can also conform.
That could be the
Conform with
corridor.
that.
Well, all I'm saying is that needs to be looked at first. And if it's consistent, that's fine, then we can go to the next step. I just don't wanna jump from here to there without getting that in. We haven't, as far as I know, the people who own those lands haven't been talked to. And the last thing, I didn't get this old and fat and short by doing things without talking to people who own property. They get very upset and I don't blame them. We
Well,
just
it's the
need to do
chicken
it.
and the egg thing, though. I guess that's where I'm struggling with this process, because you want to be proactive as a community. Because this is a lengthy process, but you're telling us that we have to have all these ducks in a row, which we can't really do because of those things. So I'm still a little cloudy on
Yep.
how it really should go.
So usually, there's always exceptions, but usually, the comprehensive plan is looking out at least 20 years, should be, at least 20 years in the future. You can go look further if you want. So you're not necessarily expecting every single property owner to be contacted. I've done comprehensive plans before. We don't contact. You have open houses. If you think it's controversial, you'll split the community into neighborhoods and every neighborhood gets their own open house. But you don't contact every single property owner and tell them that, hey, the plan for your property is changing from ag to residential. You don't do that. But yes, the village staff, the village officials, they should know who the key people are. And then you contact the key people. Whether it's a large property owner or the guy you know is, he's ready to retire. He's gonna sell that land. You guys make those decisions, you make those contacts as you see fit. So that's the comprehensive plan. You're not contacting everybody. When you do the sewer service area plan, though, it also is a 10 to 20-year planning horizon that you're looking at, that we're looking at. But it's a little bit more imminent from the standpoint. Now we're talking about where the public sewer is gonna go. The comprehensive plan doesn't talk at that level of detail. They're just talking about major roads, maybe, and definitely the land uses.
Okay.
So then, yeah, when you get to that sewer service area amendment or plan standpoint, yeah, it's better to have all the property owners be aware of it. And I would say all of them to be aware of it, and hopefully the majority of them in support of it. If there's a holdout or two, that's not uncommon. If it's important to the community, you have a couple people that aren't very comfortable with it, you can still move ahead. But then
So I think we're essentially in this unfinished business, just looking for direction to the next meeting. I mean, I think there's administrative organizing and conversations that need to get kicked off.
Well, the other thing is, I don't know what the agreement with Sussex is. We need to have a conversation with Sussex, the powers that be over there, that they're fully aware of this in there, because especially in light of what Joel said tonight, they're working with everybody on the east side and the northeast side, that they know this is coming too, because we can't send them this stuff after we get it all compiled and say, would you just sign off on this when you're not busy tomorrow in 10 minutes and do that? Because they're gonna go, nobody sat down with us and had a conversation with us, and it's not just.
Judy, we've had conversations with her about capacity in the sewer and got her GIS info when we were looking at, so she's at least aware that Lisbon's looking in this direction.
Yeah, but is the village board and the village president aware of this?
No, that I can't say that.
Well, God love Judy, I love her like a sister, but.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're getting way too far ahead of where we need to be for this.
So can I just suggest that Don put together an estimate of a scope of work that it would take to do phase one? Or did we already do that?
We did that.
We already
Sorry.
did a cost estimate, everything for phase one.
Okay. Then I
Just
say
the
that's-
planning phase you're talking about? When you say everybody talks different, what phase? one
This
is.
was the construction cost estimate for building phase one.
Okay, I think we need, first of all, an estimate, as you say, Jane. We need to get to the preliminary planning. That's where we need a very, very detailed scope of work and associated costs for that. So there's no question on that. That's what I think we need to get first. So then we could start on something. Right now, we can't start on anything. And then I'd like to see some examples of some ones that you guys have done before, so we know what we're talking about. And who's gonna be in charge of this? Where has he or she done these before? We're talking a major project here at the end of the day, when turn on the first sewer on this thing. I want to make sure that everybody's on board on this before we get too far down the road. So I'd like to see some, tell us, the last 5 they did, the person who's going to be in charge of this thing, the last 5 that they did. I want to see exactly what the qualifications, everything else, and the associated cost, and a very, very detailed scope. So there's no question about who's going to be doing what. That's my feeling. It's like a regular proposal, engineering proposal. I'm sure you've done 100 of them.
Joel, do you guys have a cheat sheet
For that level of detail, no.
for submittals for an amendment?
Yep,
Is that
Um,
something you'd be able to email to
we
me?
have a vague and general one online now.
Perfect.
I would do it, and I'll send that to you no matter what. The email that I send you guys will be a little bit more detailed.
That's fine.
I was gonna say, for the submittal for us, so we don't need the sewer layout. We need to know what the connection point is, how you're gonna get there, and if there's any major things like lift station enforcement. That's all we need to know. We don't need to know the layout of the roads. We don't need to know the layout of the sewer and water. We just know what the connection points are, the route that you're gonna get there, and if there's anything major like a lift station enforcement. That's all. Land uses, similarly, we need to know the land uses. They need, if the area is multiple land uses, we need the approximate boundaries. Again, if there's small changes after the fact, we're just looking for the general ballpark. Doesn't have to be exactly, you can change a little bit as the process goes.
You would know in fairly short order if we're even able to do this amendment, or if we had to go much further. So if his scope of work changed. If you think it's gonna take X to just fill in his checklist, that's one thing.
We
So
just-
we have some idea.
I asked Craig Kunkel just to listen in the night on Zoom. He just recently completed one working with us for Kewaskum, Village Kewaskum, for a big development down there. So we're pretty familiar with the steps it takes working with Joel. We worked with him on Good Hope as well, so I can put that together. I can definitely get that to you guys right away.
I mean, we're gonna need to provide the commission the tentative sewer routes, because you have to look at the environmental considerations. There's a lot of environmental corridors we're gonna be going through and adjacent to and everything else in what we've got tentatively laid out here. You're gonna need to know that in order to do your analysis on
But just
this.
for the major sewers, so not the entire collection system, because
I
we'll look
know,
at that
but
one, the
that's-
sewer extension.
Don's got that.
Right.
Okay.
In fact, we moved some of it already. So,
Okay.
okay,
And you're also right, we do look at that stuff. Although if it's along an existing road and the road was cutting through the corridor, now you're putting the sewer next to the road,
this
that's
is,
not a problem.
this is going through a tree line in a cornfield
Yeah.
and
Then
a
we do
lot
look
of
at that.
cattails,
Yeah,
lots,
okay.
and rock.
Right, so you have your direction.
All right, I think we're closing on that. 8A, discussion and necessary action regarding Dorner quote to repair or replace pump number 1 at Janine Lift Station and recommendation of same to village board.
So in your packet, Dorner completed their inspection of lift stations. We got the report a little bit late for the packets, but one of the things that Dustin from Sussex had brought up was one of the pumps at Janine Lift Station. It had basically a double seal fail, and they pulled that pump, took it back. That's what's in your packet, is kind of what their inspection was. They put the backup pump in for now. In there, they listed the repairs on the last page. Repair totals $3,329. I did ask them for a price for a new pump. Cost of a new pump is $6,774. And another $875 to install that. Delivery for a new pump would be 4 to 6 weeks.
Do we know how old this pump is?
I can find out, but I don't know if he had it in here. I thought it was.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joel. Yeah, 2012.
$7,600.
Thanks, Dan.
Probably hard to know. What's the useful life on these?
I think you're getting there with that.
I'm sorry, Don, how old did you say this thing was?
2012,
So it's only 12 years.
right on the first page.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, first question is, do we have? Well, this should come out of the replacement fund, which I keep being told that we have ample funds in there, so we I don't see any point. You guys are more familiar with mechanics of pumps than I ever will be.
Mike, can you speak to replacement fund? We got money in there for this?
We're talking $7,600, $7,700.
So this repair total of 3329, is that what we've already incurred or is that? what we-
No, that's fixing the stuff they got listed there right above that.
How do we pay for their inspection, tear this thing apart? Do we pay for that already?
I don't think that was part of the quote we improved. Dustin just asked him to take it back right away and get us a quote, so I have not seen anything, what they'd have built, unless it's built into that 3329, and I can check that
Well, one way or another, we owe them for what they've done already.
so far.
So we owe them $1,500 or so to tear this pump apart, right? So we're up to $9,000 one way or the other.
I guess this goes back to our other questions we've had is, can this pump be used at any of the other?
There's two stations that have 7.5 horsepower pumps, so this could be used at one of the other, aside from Janine. It could be used at one of the other stations.
I mean, is it wise to get it repaired and then talk about? I guess I don't know, the replacement that went in, was that brand new or was that a used?
I believe that was a brand new one that went in that sat at Sussex.
Committee thoughts? I don't deal with these pumps, so.
My personal philosophy is if you're spending it as half as much for a new pump, they just get a new pump. Especially if you're already, 12 years old or more.
Yeah, one would like to think you spend $3,000 and get 12 more years, but. Don't know if that's the case.
Generally. And this seems like it actually worked pretty hard, broken for a long time.
I mean, one of the things he noted in the inspection is the impeller seems like it's okay and didn't recommend doing anything with that, but. To me, that would probably be the next thing down the road that. So I guess I would agree that. You're gonna spend $3,400 on a repair. Long run, you need money add with a new pump.
Along with the fact that if you get another 12 years out of a pump, then you're spending twice as much money on a new pump in another 12 years. Agree.
Okay. I guess what I'm hearing is.
I can make a motion.
New pump is the direction we're leaning.
I defer to these two people because they deal with this stuff on a daily basis.
I agree. If there's a motion to be made,
I make a motion to replace the Janine lift station pump with a new pump
for,
for $6,774 plus $875 to install.
can I pause your motion? The clarifying question would be 875, does that need to be installed or is the replacement fine to stay in?
I think we could just leave the replacement, but I'll verify that.
Yeah, because
So-
otherwise we're gonna
So if we don't need to spend
store that in the next
875.
truck or something.
So.
If the pump needs
If
to be
necessary, yeah.
installed, the $875.
The pump, motion's been made for the total price and then 875 for install if necessary.
Do we need to add on the cost of the work that they did, that they're showing in through here, so we have to do it twice?
It'll be a bill paid. We won't need to.
Okay, that's all.
Anyone want to second that?
I will second it.
Second by Mr. Plus, further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries 4-0 for the new pump.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to,
Can I add something quick while we're on that? I work with Dustin, we're right next to each other, and what they're kind of worried about there is they have an issue like that
and how long it takes to go from us to the main board? And is there a way to speed it up? As in who's, we made our decision, but then it'll go to our main board. And is that gonna be another 2 weeks, or is that,
When's the next village board meeting?
it's like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
So
December
essentially,
11th.
you're waiting 4 to 6 weeks to get an answer on.
right? and
4 to
he's-
6 weeks delivery.
No, he's saying
Yeah.
any other future repairs, there's a long delay. To get the message back to Sussex who's doing the repairs.
Yeah, they pull it and they find out, and then they have to wait and talk to Don to say, okay, can we turn it in? And that, it keeps on going farther down the line. Where
So when
if
they
you-
find out a pump's down or something, they get worried because we got the backup in and now we don't have a backup to that. So something fails there, then we're down to one pump.
Oh, what's the solution? We still gotta get village board approved before we approve $9,000.
But is there, I think, is there a
Unless
way
there's
to
a
like,
threshold that we can allow them to spend a threshold of money.
Good looking. I don't
Or
think the
is
village
it-
board's gonna give us,
it's kind of like, is there an emergency, like, okay, you have another one go down, boom. And,
well, I think that's completely different.
Yeah, but I know they're just looking at, to find out.
Yeah, I
For them
guess.
to go through
Put that
with
on the
it.
next agenda. I know what you're saying. I
Right.
mean, we're gonna wait 2 more weeks to go to village board for approval plus the 4 to 6 weeks to order.
Right,
but the nice thing about this is we do have cash on hand to pay for this.
Mhm.
It's not like we need to go dig up a gold brick in the lawn over through here. I mean, that to me is a big difference.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why we have this replacement fund, to have this money available.
And in some cases, if you appoint a staff person some leeway with a threshold that they're allowed to spend. And I'm not sure how that would work in this case, but it certainly then would, allow them to continue to do the job that they need to do.
Yeah, I guess there's nothing we're gonna do right now, but
right.
we can put it on our future agenda. That is a very good point. I don't know that having one pump and no replacement is an emergency, but obviously, no pump and a broken pump is
Right.
an emergency.
Unless you're the person that has to respond to the
All the
pump that's,
homeowners and-
the 2 pumps that are broken at the same time.
You want that on the village board agenda for discussion, because really you all agree that.
Yeah, I would
maybe
just,
something- I don't know. if
because otherwise we're gonna have to,
necessary.
to get you an answer, we're gonna have to wait till January.
Right, yeah.
Well, it's better than
Cause
March or never.
I mean,
no, cause I mean,
would you
it
prefer?
would have to go to December's Public Works, which is after Village Board December, and then it would have to get approved from committee to go to Village Board in
Sorry,
January.
this is a policy decision that the village board would make, not.
Right.
Yeah, and that's why I'm looking at you. Do you want me to just put this as a discussion item for village board December 11th? And
Yeah.
then we can get a response back to committee a week later.
Or they could
Yeah.
just make a decision.
Right.
One or the other, but something would come back. to
Yeah, at the
committee.
end of the day, you're gonna be carrying this, so.
December Village Board.
For
Discussion necessary action regarding proposed 2025 sewer televising.
So we were going through GIS records, looking at areas televised for 2025. I think I brought this up before, but we're probably going through the system every 4 years. So with the INI issue with the land and interceptor, I thought with Business Park East being built out, it might be a good time to televise Business Park East along with the laterals up to the point of connection at the right of way. And just verify that everything is good there and we got an issue, gets fixed. If not,
When was this sewer put in?
2021.
So it's only like 3 or 4 years
3 or
old.
4 years old.
Wasn't it televised when it was
It
put in?
was, but there was nothing on it at that time.
Okay,
Now
Well-
I'm saying Richard Road's all built out, Business Park East for the most part, except for Forester's all built out. People have connected to it. Are their laterals leaking? So,
If that meter is going in, Is that the time to televise it at the same
Well, it
time?
may tell you whether, how fast you need to put the meter in, because we never did make a decision on the meter, did we?
No, we need a quote from We Energies yet. So when that
I
meter's,
think you're fine to do it now, especially if you've got active sewer, people are connected.
How often do we televise?
like I said, I think right now we're getting through the system probably every 4 years.
The entire system.
Last year we did just shy, I think, of 8,800 feet.
So this will be 5 years, 4 years.
This is 3,800 feet.
Right. This
Especially when you're
isn't-
looking at air, was the grading complete when the sewer was installed? Probably not.
all the road grading and stuff. No, that was a sole separate
It-
bid.
Yeah, I would do it.
Is the building on the corner, that Color Ink place connected to this or not?
Wyckoff, yes.
It
They
is?
were, they were the first.
So
ones
this
that
would
hooked to it.
include everything that's in the business. park.
Correct. Richard Road and Leeds Lane.
Yeah,
And we'll do it all the way up to the point of connection that'll land an interceptor.
and we've got money in the budget for this, right?
We do annually.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve the sewer televising route for 2025.
Motion made,
And we will go out and get quotes and bring them back then for that.
I'll second it.
motion made by Jane, seconded by Ms. Beverly. Further discussion?
And you're on board with doing the laterals up to the right of way?
Yes.
Okay. Okay,
Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, 4-0. Discussion necessary action regarding CMON updates and filing and recommendation of village board.
in your packets is the updated CMOM. If you remember, we submitted the CMAR earlier this year. The CMOM got updated to change the town to the village of Lisbon and any other updates. Did a little bit more rewriting on that. The last one was prepared by the prior engineer. So this is the update to that. Would get submitted to DNR with your approval, or is this going to village board after?
Village board.
Okay. I guess it'd be a recommendation to village board with your approval.
Anyone have any questions? I'll make a motion to recommend the CMON updates and filing to the village board for final approval.
Second.
Motion made by myself, seconded by Jane. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0. Discussion necessary action to consider contracting grinder pump work to another company. Kathy?
I wasn't asking for any action. All I was, wanted was, just make you aware that there's other companies out there that do the same work or do something a little different. Develop, they gave us the price for it, and then, that is.
I think that's.
Since the, sewer system was put in originally. And, you can continue to, use them for all our maintenance and, emergency pump replacements. But then I spoke with, gentleman from area septic installation, got their, his information from Conwa, because they do work in Conwa. And, when I spoke with Austin, he made it sound like he doesn't replace pumps very often at all. That you actually go in and fix the pump. Because that's what they do as part of their business, is they fix them. And so it's just another concept that I just wanted to.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to it. I just want to make sure that we understand the capabilities of the Bellic and the scope of work that they provide to the utility. And I don't know if that's captured forward by an RFP. I don't know how that, I mean, I think it's fiscally prudent to obviously see what the services we're getting and what they're costing, but I wanna make sure that other companies are gonna be able to provide these services.
Yeah, I just wanted to start a discussion. This wasn't to make any decisions, just
Yeah.
start a discussion, letting you know that we've been with the same company for all these years. Have not, considered other companies, and so you may want to look at something different.
Sure,
For 2025.
My only concern is whoever we hire is a licensed plumber. So,
and that's, I mean, that's why I'm thinking an RFP spelling out our requirements. Guess you consider that.
yeah, I think it's a good discussion to have.
So I mean, is there any action that staff can take in the next month?
I just wanted to get you guys thinking about it.
Okay. There's, administrative action is all I can see for this. Carry that forward. Anyone have any item, actually, anyone have anything on that additional? Yeah. Items to be placed on future agenda?
So things that I've got from our discussion coming back. So staff is gonna draft a policy for citizen requests for the committee to formally approve and recommend to the board. Looks like Joel and Don are gonna get the pertinent info to us for the proposed sewer service area expansion. Don, is that something you think you can do for December?
Yep.
Okay. So we'll do that for December, and then Dan's request, and Mark said you put. Excuse me, Mark, you said put that on village board for policy decision December 11th.
Yep.
And then if they decide to send it back, it can come back here a week later for the December meeting.
Right. I guess to tag along with the previous one, I'd like to see like a comprehensive check off to make sure that, are we gonna have to amend the comp plan? You know, like, it's not just all gonna be on Don's shoulders. I think there's work for staff to be done, so if.
Right, and that's why I asked Joel for that cheat sheet, so
Right.
we can start putting together things that we already have,
Right,
so.
all right. I'll second. All right, we'll be looking for item 10, adjournment.
I'll move for adjournment.
Motion moved, anyone second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Plus, any discussion, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Meeting out at 16 p.m.
Stop.